do a lot of people just not have enough of a POV that is really worth talking about?
When it comes to point of view, I don't think a lot of people have a unique point of view. Certainly not that often. I will be damned if you're having a unique point of view about all things all the time. This is why I call BS on like company newsletters. Do you really have that much to say on a monthly basis? If so, unbelievable, but check yourself.
RC, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
So what would you say is your claim to fame?
I run the brand team over at BuildOps, which is a unicorn startup, which is rare in these worlds in this time, for what it's worth. And I think most uniquely is that I run brand, content, and comms. So it's 3 different kind of disciplines all in one, which is both overwhelming and also like awesome. Because if you think about it, it is like the chief storyteller, if you will. And that makes sense. And those 3 areas are kind of combined, right?
What a unique position. I've never heard of that. I didn't realize that. I knew you were head of brand and I didn't realize it was over all 3 of those.
Yes. Yeah. So it's a jigsaw puzzle of tech stack, agencies, and internal, just flexing. I mean, what's interesting is, my history is journalism anyway. So the comms side of things is actually very natural to me. But the content side is what I've, cut my teeth on in terms of B2B startup life. And then brand is just my passion. I am very committed to not cheating people of the experience that they deserve and expect. So I think that just runs through all elements of what I do.
Well, we had a fantastic conversation before this podcast. I don't always do the pre-conversation, but we did. And it was really tough. Just give our listeners or viewers an idea of really tough to not dive into some of these topics you and I talked about. So without further ado, let's jump right in, RC. I've got a question for you. Follow up to our first conversation, which was this idea that you believe in thought leadership, but not thought regurgitation. I want to know what you mean by that.
I don't know where I read this. It was on LinkedIn, but I'm not sure who originated it. But the term slop ed, it just captures exactly the perfection of what I mean. And obviously that's pervasive in all things that anybody's doing right now is just the amount of AI-ness that's happening. But if you think about editors who are trying to decide which essays and articles to surface, the bar has always been high in terms of what is okay and what's worthwhile and but now it's so much higher because of slop ed, because anybody can produce at scale across the board. I think it's dangerous and lazy for folks to just assume that they can use AI to get their thoughts out faster if their thoughts aren't actually their thoughts. And so while AI might help, and for what it's worth, AI tools that I use sometimes come up with some turns of phrases that I'm yes, that's fantastic. That's really clever. Let me use that. Let me work on that. But if you're starting from the world of AI, then you've got nothing. You've got nothing of original thought. And so you're not going to stand out. If I'm putting on my editor pants, I can see right through it. Where's the story? Where's the vignette? Where's the unique point of view? Where's something I've never experienced before? Because that's still what I care about more. And more so now because I'm inundated with a huge amount of just the same stuff over and over again.
Well, do you think it's a problem with unique point of view or drawing out the unique point of view? Meaning, do a lot of people just not have enough of a POV that is really worth talking about?
I think, for example, when it comes to point of view, I don't think a lot of people have a unique point of view. Certainly not that often. I will be damned if you're having a unique point of view about all things all the time. Who are you? This is why I think I call BS on company newsletters. Do you really have that much to say on a monthly basis? Really? Do you really have enough to interrupt someone's inbox that much as a B2B company? Really? If so, unbelievable, but check yourself. I doubt it. And so I think that part of it is the expectation now that because we can write so fast with AI that we should be submitting articles on a weekly or monthly basis. But there's no way you have that unique point of view on a weekly or monthly basis. Sit back a minute, understand volume is not the play here. If you really want to get traction in key audiences and Wall Street Journal or key publications, whatever it may be, take a hot minute to really formulate a point of view and accept the fact that one article a quarter is probably going to be more effective for you than trying to shop around 5 quasi-average articles every single week.
When you talk about that, with leadership in your past, have you had that conversation with leadership in the past? Because sometimes there's a translation issue between, revenue and ROI and volume, and then what you're saying, which is, well, what if we focused on just something substantial, that has more depth and more meat to it, even though it doesn't reach out and touch someone as often. What has that conversation looked like for you?
I mean, it is challenging. And what I tell my team often, and what I tell my colleagues often, and what I tell myself often is, in what way can you continue to show progress towards someone's idea of success that may not align with yours, while secretly in the background working on that longer term thing? I think that's it. Because in the end, like, yes, I could say like, oh yes, sit on this and work on an article for a quarter, and leadership is not going to be okay. That a CEO is not going to be okay with that. But what's the alternative? What are they really trying to get? Are they trying to get visibility? Great. Let's get them on a podcast. Let's get them do some like lighter lift LinkedIn articles. Let's get them on like a tech council who might have a lower threshold of editorial prowess, right? And so I have to respect that. And so how can I meet them halfway while aligning myself for the success that I know is going to happen longer term?
Yeah, editorial excellence sometimes has to take a backseat to building bridges, right? Let's go back to the idea of regurgitation. I mean, AI is obviously, that's all it can do. No, I should say that. It's really good at it, right? It's really good at taking everybody's ideas and kind of spitting it out in kind of a middle-of-the-road vanilla version. Are you saying there's no, like, where's the room for, like, sharing ideas that are well known just because your buyers may not know them? What's the distinction between regurgitation and here's this thing our buyers actually need to know, even though it's been said a million times?
I think there's definitely room for that. I think that, like, I mean, and you and I talked about this in a pre-call on my opinions on corporate social media, which we can dive into as well. But that opens up the space for, long story short, like, I think the corporate social media is basically like the epitome of checkbox marketing, which essentially means like, yeah, great, we posted something on social media. Who cares? To what end? Who cares? Like, who is following an B2B on Instagram? Honestly, like, if you are, why? What are you doing? Anyway, so then it opens up the avenue for execs and other subject matter experts that are internal to the organization to be much more vocal on social media, because that's what social media is human beings. So I think there is an avenue for regurgitating existing content, but I think it needs to capture the individual's voices in some way, shape, or form. It needs to be consistent, two-way form. It needs to be consistent to their voice, but then also needs to be aligned to certain pillars across the organization. So like what we have internally here at BuildOps is we have our brand pillars, which is like the things that we stand for. But subsequent to that, we also have exec, basically, brand pillars as well. Now, they are not divorced of one of another. They are complementary, but one gives a little bit more humanity to it. So our CEO, for example, has very specific, like, he has a military background. He comes from the trades as well. Like, there are angles that he can really lean into and talk about with authority because of his lived experiences. So we make sure that we're consistent with that approach when we're suggesting to him angles and what have you. And to do that, AI doesn't necessarily regurgitate existing content. It synthesizes it through what we have, basically, and what I've created, which is basically like a voice skill. I'm not sure if the listeners know what skills are too much, but basically fancy way of saying like a markdown file. So markdown files, it's the new, I don't know what would be what it would be like 5 years ago, but basically like skills are absolutely essential to the way that I do work right now.
And this is in the cloud environment?
It doesn't. So that's the beauty of the skill. So skill is agnostic to the AI tool that you want to use. And so that's the ideal, right? So like I created my first ever skill scenario when Cowork first came out. And that was like, it's dependent on your desktop. So it needs to read files on your desktop. And that's where markdown files, skills were important. So I created our brand document in a skill, essentially like read this thing, this is how to apply it, et cetera, et cetera. Very much like a brand doc, essentially. But now you can apply those into individual chats with like GBT or Claude or whoever it may be. And you could be like, use this skill, use this markdown file as your reference point. And so what I've done is, and through the help of someone else who does a lot of AI work, created like basically like a questionnaire, like an interview, pretend like you're sitting down for an interview with someone. And they have to answer these questions as honestly, and some of them are kind of vulnerable, if you will. So when you talk about like a CEO or someone who may not be comfortable being vulnerable with certain people, you let them kind of do this on their own. Like, here, just literally record yourself answering these questions. And for me, it was 60 questions. For someone else who I got it inspired from, it was 100 questions. But it really dives into like their way of thinking and what they like and what they don't like. And then from there, I use my AI tool to basically create like a skill. This is the voice of CEO X. This is the voice of Chief Product Officer, et cetera. And that becomes then the source of like, all right, this is a topic that we're really passionate about. This is a thing that our customers need to know about. I want an idea of like what this would sound like through the voice of insert that person. Here's the skill. Please use this skill as a starting point. Go forth. And then they start creating that thing. I will say this is something that I say to everyone on my team, including freelancers as well. And if I hire someone or if I'm interviewing someone, I'll let them know like, hey, like, how do you use AI? And it's always like, especially with younger folks, it's always like a nervous, like they don't want to say they use AI. They want to be like a very strong writer or whatever it may be. I go, heads up, like, I don't care how much you use AI. I will know if you're a good writer or not, because in the end, AI should not be the best writer in the room. If it is, it's obvious, right? And so when I'm doing all this work with AI and having it spit out stuff, like I know what works, I know what doesn't work, I know what's consistent, what's inconsistent, I know what's like a trope or not. Like I'm the editor in chief here at this point. And if I don't have the chops to understand what good experience is, what good writing is, it will show, right? So I'm totally comfortable with the use of AI, knowing that like, I'm an old man now, so like I've done a lot of writing without the damn thing, so I'm good at it.
What's interesting is how these old school journalism editorial standards are coming back to the fore. I mean, I'm hearing that when you're talking about, right, quality enough to make it through the filter to be in our newspaper. That human judgment comes from experience is more important than ever. And it makes you wonder. I mean, certainly it's not a skill that will ever die with the journalism generation. But I would just wonder what it'll do to that judgment, as people are consuming, just like an AI is, like, AI is consuming slop and is putting out slop and perpetuate this slop cycle. Humans are going to do the same.
I talked about this to one of my teammates yesterday, just like she had mentioned to me, we were talking in passing, and I was concerned about like, as you and I are, about like AI and how it's going to rob creativity because of the fact that like, one needs to like fail a lot and they get a lot of ugly stuff before something pretty happens. And now they don't really need to do that. And she had mentioned like, well, I think those who would continue to like test out and struggle will continue to. And I countered. I said, well, honestly, we're wired as human beings to avoid distress. Like if we can get around it, like that's not just human beings, all living beings are designed, like if they don't need to go through this and they can go around to make go quicker, they will do that. And so AI is a drug that'll allow us to do that. Like no matter how much we in theory want to be like, yes, we'll struggle through the pain, whatever, like our wiring is setting us up for failure for that, for sure.
Yeah. It's interesting to think through the repercussions. I don't know where historically, I'm a big historian, right? I always think back, where would we have experienced this similar thing in history? And I have no idea.
I mean, one would counter the calculator was in theory going to do this, but then still mathematicians do the mathematician. Like, I don't know much about that, but like the term computer used to be a human.
You're right. Yeah. The computer was a human being. Let's go talk to the computer, not your Mac. No, it was a person back probably around accounting somewhere.
I think to bring it to full circle is basically, and this is not like groundbreaking perspective by any means, but I absolutely feel like the differentiator longer term will be humanity. And so I do think as AI becomes pervasive in all sorts of production wise, those things that make us human. So being more vulnerable, having those mistakes, having a point of view that is wrong, but still is your point of view, is truly going to make people stand out. And it's sad that most people are not going to dive into that because it's how freaking easy. Like, just be you.
If the future is full of hot takes, to summarize it perhaps in an incomplete way, how do we encourage that? Because I know humans are, I work on LinkedIn. Our clients work on LinkedIn, and you work with leadership, and the higher you up in leadership, you go in leadership in my experience, the less you want to say, because one thing you say could lead the organization in a direction, or you could say something by mistake and then PR's got to come in and fix the problem, whatever.
I mean, let's talk like the upper echelons of the exec tree, like CEO level, it's got to be rooted then in some sort of fact or finding. So, for example, we've partnered with this isn't like also not groundbreaking. So we've announced this, but we've partnered with Harvard Business School to conduct a study based on basically like the labor gap and the trades gap and like why this has existed and what's the mentality, what all the things that led to this fact. Like I'm not sure how old you are, but like I am the lovely Gen X, which is the forgotten generation, which awesome. We are very happy to be forgotten, but we are the generation that quite literally all the wood shops and metal shops were taken away. Like I never took those classes; they didn't exist to me. But 2 grades before me did, right? Like it was literally I was at that cusp where all of a sudden like, oh no, let's reappropriate this money toward more math and stuff like that, which is great, but also now coders are jobless. But anyway, so we are partnering with them for expansive study, and there are some unique findings in there that are leading to certainly some hot takes and perspectives, but they're not just hot takes and perspectives that any of us just imagined out of thin air and like, oh, we think this, well, let's just share this out. It's we found this information, it's presenting some new light, and this is how it connects to like my worldview. Let me share that. If you root more things with statistics and data and findings, what have you, I think that leadership will have a more comfortable time of being like, okay, yes, because I can point to this other thing and like I have validity on why I have this perspective versus just like me who might say like, for example, like corporate social media is crap. Like I'm just like, I have no problem saying that, but like, where's the statistics? I don't have those, but like, I'm not a CEO.
Oh, that totally makes sense. So you say it's kind of a two-prong approach of having your leaders do their thing, do the thought leadership, but also pair it with reports, preferably self-done, whatever that word is. The ones you do yourself, not necessarily third-party reports. And that kind of gives them why am I? It's the afternoon. Maybe that's why I can't. My executive function is low, but gives them. I'm picturing the stuff you put up against the building when you're trying to scaffolding. Gives them the scaffolding for maybe giving that courage to go a little higher with their thought leadership.
Yeah, and so it doesn't have to be a Harvard conducted study by any means, right? So what is interesting, and like this feeds a lot of my content beyond just, for example, exec comms, but things like Gong is our gold mine. So for those who are not familiar, Gong is, and there's many tools like it, but Gong just happens to be one of the leaders. It's a recording software, so all sales calls, all customer calls, anything that's talking to prospects or customers is recorded. And now in the land of AI, it's good for them. They built this thing that now has a warehouse of information. Now AI can parse through all this stuff. Let's say in my industry specifically, I wanted to learn more about like what are the most common questions that HVAC led shops are asking when looking for tools like ours. And then we can do a search on Gong, find out all that information and create an interesting perspective about that. Like, so like, yes, I could do a FAQ for my website for the content marketing side of my life, but then I can just start figuring out like, what would be the CEO level of this? Like, what's the bigger trend or impact here? Like, what are they not asking, for example? Like, that could be a thing. Like now my CEO is saying like, here's the one question that HVAC companies are not asking that they should be, or something like that, right? And that information was led by all this stuff from Gong. So proprietary information is wherever you see fit. If you have the wherewithal to, by all means, like assess how people are using your product, which I know is a very hard thing for most companies, that also is a gold mine for information as well, to find trends and insights that you can then start spinning up into perspectives. Again, using perhaps your AI voice skill doc that I alluded to earlier.
Yeah, man, I love that. That is extremely tactical and reminds me a lot of some of the strategies I talk about with like how do you actually record video, but that's like a very practical, like you get a tool in, it's got a database, or it's got just a huge repertoire of internal calls and external calls, and then you sort through it. And I love that. That's a fantastic use case for AI. Well, we're going to wrap it up here soon. Is there anything we didn't talk about that you're like, I forgot to say this?
I did allude to the whole corporate social media thing, and I want to expand on that for a second because it is like my ethos in general. It's not that I think that corporate social media is a waste of time. It's that truly like, I think that marketers often make the worst marketers because we try to over-engineer and like force people to experience something. We all kind of just forget like we are all the same human beings, right? So what do you go on Instagram for? What do you go on LinkedIn? Are you really like, would you actually consume the content that you are pushing out there? And the answer is most likely no. Like I would go to LinkedIn to follow a company or look at a company if I'm going to apply to them or if I'm about to become a customer. I'm just not like following them because they make awesome stuff on LinkedIn. Like that's not a thing. And so like you have to rethink your metrics, you have to rethink your approach, you have to rethink how much investment you're doing to these accounts if that's really not actually like a business value. And that's why I'm so big on individuals being our best social media channels, because again, that's where people go to social media for, is to follow people. And so if you think you just take that across the board, like, are you really downloading ebooks, or can you think of something different? Are you really like watching a webinar about a thought leadership thing versus like, this is another example. Like we've shifted our webinar programming at BuildOps because it's a lot to ask, especially the folks that we target, a lot to ask them to sit for 45 minutes in the middle of a work day to talk about like some abstract thought leadership-y thing. Why not just talk about your product? And like you might get lower numbers for registrations, but hell, those are people who actually want to see your product. And so like I have a hard time joining a webinar about it. Like I might register for a webinar. I'll never watch the thing. Like I like fire off registrations all over the board for these webinars. But if I'm interested in a product, I will for sure watch that webinar, because now it's actually, like you mentioned with Gong thing, actionable. I want actionable stuff. Like my time is limited. Like I want to walk away, be like, oh, okay, this is a thing that I can use. Let me go for it. If we just remember that as marketers, I think we'd rethink a lot of our approaches across the board.
Well, RC, I truly love this conversation. It got my gears going. And where can people learn about you?
Go on LinkedIn. You can also go to rcvictorino.com. That's where I passively do some essays, including I share actually the questionnaire that I have for the voice profile. So you can check it out there. So rcvictorino.com. But check that out on LinkedIn as well. I'm somewhat active there as well.
Thank you again for being here.
Awesome. Thank you so much.